By the way, I think that I grew up not all that far from Cleveland. I was in West Virginia, which is next door to Ohio, which contains Cleveland. And I think that spelling, I think it's Spades. That's a Cleveland accent. It's got a slight E spin on it, so it's like Spades.
Spades.
Yeah.
Spades.
Yeah, Cleveland. There's a town right outside of Cleveland called Parma, Ohio, and they pronounce it Parma. So that there's this weird little Spades. Parma. Okay, so Harvey, I'm a poet, and I've been a poet since I was a young teenager, and I started reading Pekar in college, early college, and but like I say, I grew up in West Virginia, and I went to school at Kent State, and Kent State is an hour outside of Cleveland, hour and a half. And so there was a lot of exchange, Cleveland to Kent, Kent to Cleveland, back and forth culturally, and a bunch of people. I hung around a bunch of poet circles, and those people all knew Harvey or knew of Harvey, or some people would go to Cleveland poetry readings, and Harvey would be there, things like that. And there was a guy named Daniel Thompson, who's in a few different Pekar strips. And Daniel Thompson was a friend of the Kent poetry scene, and he would come and read once in a while. And I knew Daniel Thompson quite well, and so I assumed that someday I would meet Pekar, because I knew a guy that was actually in the Pekar strips. And in a very typical American Splendor kind of way, I just never did. I never parlayed that connection into meeting Harvey Pekar ever, so it never happened. But I did meet Daniel Thompson, and a long time ago I used to have an American Splendor t-shirt, which Daniel Thompson had signed for me, just because he knew Harvey, not because he was in the scene on the shirt or anything like that. And that's also gone in typical American Splendor style. That shirt's missing somewhere. So I'm going to obsess about that for 20 years just to honor Harvey. Where's my shirt? But what Harvey Pekar really meant to me was my poetry is very much about just stuff that's happening. Like right now I'm working on a poem about getting a haircut, that kind of stuff that happens in everyday life. And so when I saw this guy, you know, writing these things and was published and was popular and everyone knew about him, I thought, I'm validated, my stuff, you know. I mean, there were also guys, a whole bunch of poets, Richard Brodigan, Ezra Pound, a bunch of guys doing the same thing. But it seemed somehow Harvey, he took it a level deeper. I would write about, you know, just the magic of sitting in the laundromat and trying to time the colors of the clothes going around in the dryer. But he would connect that to some big cosmic thought. And I could never do that. I implied the cosmic thought, where Harvey would actually make the connection. That was balls, in my opinion, to go that extra step. And so just the idea that he was talking about what I was talking about and making it even more sacred, in my opinion, made him really important to me. It made my poetry seem like maybe I was on the right track. And another reason that Harvey Pekar was very, very important to me. If you think about what Harvey does, what he's really trying to do, you know, he calls himself our man, that kind of stuff. He's trying to make an everyman. He's trying to make Chaplin's tramp, the common man going through everything going on around him. But he's anything but. He's fucked up. He's neurotic. He's obsessive compulsive, he's vain, he's lazy, and at the same time work obsessed. He's entirely fearful. He seemed, his character was completely dysfunctional, and that made him my hero. He was my hero. I thought I'm all that stuff. I'm all that stuff. And you know, and he's doing it. He's out there doing it. He's making art, and he's still doing it, right? Despite all that stuff. And who wasn't fascinated with that guy, right? That just to see a guy that screwed up not even really not even know it, because I think he thought he was like everybody else, and maybe he was, but he was definitely like me. He was my hero, the guy that could be that messed up. My wife and I talk about this all the time. Harvey Pekar and I have a lot of things in common. Frighteningly too many things in common. But I think she would even admit Harvey was way worse than I was. But the point was, he was doing it, so I kind of felt like, hey, if he can make it, I can make it. That was the idea. Okay, so I'm going to read a couple that.
Maybe just two, because Kathy talked.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's see what I've got here.
You're going to do Young Crumb and Alice Quinn. How about that?
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay. So you want me to be are there any women in Young Crumb?
Yeah, you just be everybody else
I'll be everybody else.
in Young Crumb.
All right.
Oh, one more thing I wanted to say about, about Harvey. Some of the illustrations, I think if you look at them, Crumbs especially, everybody just seems so defeated.
That's Cleveland, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like I said, I know that area a bit. I'm not from there, but I know it a bit. And Crumb captures that defeated, hunched over, sort of beat up, almost weathered just by circumstance kind of look. Mm-hmm. So much, yeah.
Rust Belt. I grew up in Michigan, so.
Right, that's right. You know it, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Young Crumb story. This is Harvey meeting Crumb, which essentially changed American culture. That meeting, I would say. Back in the fall of 1962, when I was still a big jazz record collector, I was talking to this guy I knew about meeting another collector.
Yeah, Harv, there's this guy I want you to meet that just moved into town. His name's Marty Pauls, and he's a big collector. He goes mostly for the older stuff.
I was always anxious to meet collectors of early jazz because I collected more modern stuff and frequently could swap traditional jazz 78s I'd found to them for swing and bebop records they picked up that I wanted. Oh yeah? A moldy fig, huh? I'd definitely like to meet him. I can make good trades with those guys. I got a big bunch of choice 1925 35 records around that I got cheap from some guy who was breaking up his collection. I want to keep some, but I'd be willing to let some go. If this guy's got any 1940 sides that I need, maybe we can do some dealing.
There's this guy staying with Pauls that just got in from Philadelphia named Bob Crumb. He's a couple of years younger than us. He collects too, so you can meet him.
Sure, thanks for putting me on to these guys, Dave. So we went to Paul's apartment and I met him and Crumb.
Harv, this is Marty and Bob.
How you doing?
How you doing?
After the introductions, I got down to business and started looking through Paul's records, trying to find something I wanted. Hey, what do you want for this J. McShann thing? It's got a lamination crack in it, but maybe I can still use it. Look, you got about 10 records here I'd like to deal with you for. How about if I bring some choice older stuff over and we make a trade?
Sure, we can probably work something out.
Yeah, good. I'll come back this weekend then.
Lug.
That's so Crumb. After the business part of the visit was over, I stayed around and talked to Pauls and Crumb, who were nice guys. So you're a collector too, huh?
Yeah, but I don't have as much stuff as Marty. Most of my records are back in Philadelphia now, anyway.
Uh-huh. Say, how'd you guys get to know each other with one living in Philadelphia and the other in Akron?
Well, a few years ago, Robert and his brother Charles put out a comic book called Foo and advertised it in a fanzine. I bought it and liked it, and we started corresponding, and I went to Delaware to visit him when he was living there. Robert's a really good artist. Why don't you show him that thing you're working on now, Robert? Yeah, okay.
So Crumb showed me this comic book novel he was working on, the Big Yum Yum book. I had never seen anything like the Yum Yum book. I really got into it. Say, this is terrific. What are you going to do with it when you finish it?
I don't know. I hadn't thought about it. It's just an exercise.
So, what are you going to do while you're in town?
I was thinking about getting a job. I'm going down to American Greeting Cards tomorrow for an interview. I'm taking him some of my artwork to look at.
I didn't think he'd be able to get anything as an artist because times were bad. He didn't have much experience. but they liked what he showed them at American Greetings and hired him as a color separator. Pauls and Crumb lived in my neighborhood. We got along well, so I used to go over to see him. Mostly we talk about jazz. At that time I knew Pauls a lot better than Crumb. Crumb was a pretty quiet, retiring guy.
Well, one guy I think you definitely ought to listen to is...
But I remember Crumb and I did go junk shopping one time for old records. We didn't find any sides, but Crumb dug the experience anyway. We went to a part of town he wasn't familiar with, and he was real interested in it.
Well, what do you know? A white slump.
Crumb did wind up looking at one of them big old console radios with all them different bands and push buttons in a used furniture store, though. He really liked old things, old music, old toys. He thought they had more character than modern stuff.
Hey, how much you want for this?
Anyway, Pauls and Crumb were really into comic books. I knew something about comics too, and they got me more interested than ever.
Yeah, see, these Peter Wheat books are by Walt Kelly. They're pretty rare.
Yeah, can I see him for a minute? Meanwhile, Crumb was really moving up the ladder at American Greetings. He got promoted and became one of their top artists in the highbrow card department. Pat, pat. People in Cleveland started to get hip to Crumb's artwork and really like it. As they did, he started to come out of his shell socially, started hanging around with the bohemian crowd.
Suck.
He lived with Paul for a couple of years, but eventually got himself a place in a huge apartment with several other people. I remember him telling me how pleased he was with all the space.
Yeah, this is the first time I've actually had my own room.
One of Crumb's roommates was Buzzy Linhart, who later became a nationally known rock musician. Buzzy had a cute, chubby girlfriend named Liz that Crumb used as a model for some of his cartoon stuff, including this thing he did for the American Greetings Bulletin called Roberta Smith, Office Girl.
Blah, blah, yak, yak.
That's also so Crumb. Crumb was so successful at American Greetings that they allowed him a great deal of freedom. He could travel all over the world and do what he wanted as long as he did his work and sent it to them. So he took off, went to Europe and New York, did some work for Harvey Kurtzman's Help. When he came back to Cleveland again, people here thought he was a celebrity.
Did you hear Crumb is back in town?
No kidding, great. Where's he at? I want to see him. When I first met Crumb, he was real shy and pretty ill at ease with girls. But the first time I met him after he came back from his travels, he was married. She was a local girl from Cleveland Heights.
This is my wife, Diana.
Hi.
How you doing? He stayed around Cleveland for a while, but in January of 1967 took off for San Francisco, where he started to make a name for himself as one of the few underground cartoonists. I took a trip out to San Francisco in 1968 with my wife and visited him at his apartment in the Haight-Ashbury district. Yeah, man, we've been hearing about you. It's so nice you're doing good.
Suck.
Although he was never what you'd call a hippie, he picked up some stuff from them. It was weird for me knowing what Crumb used to be like, to see how he'd loosened up.
Yeah, I've been taking a lot of dope. It really opened things up for me. Gave me a new perspective.
Although he settled in California, Crumb used to like to take these cross-country trips. When he stopped in Cleveland in 1970 and 1971, he stayed with me and my wife.
Hey, Harvey.
Hey man, glad you could make it. At that time, my wife and I were having a lot of trouble getting along. We both liked Crumb, and he brought us news from the big outside world, so it was nice for us when he'd visit.
Spanish rice.
Finally, though, it got so my wife and I couldn't stand living together. We split and decided to get divorced. This really made me feel terrible, since we've been together for a long time and had some good things going for us. I was really lonely. I wrote to Crumb about it. He sent me back an envelope containing a Captain Marvel tie clip, a 1941 Your Ideal Love Mate card with a picture of a platinum blonde on it, and a letter that began,
Harvey, got your letter today. Heavy, baby. Heavy. Getting divorced. That came as a surprise. I thought you two were doomed to be stuck with each other for life. Ah, well, nobody stays together, but nobody. The time when people stay together for 50 years is rapidly passing, I think. But you've probably made up by now, right? You've decided to try patching things up, right? No? You are getting divorced. You're getting divorced? You are getting divorced? Far fucking out!
A few months after my divorce, Crumb visited me again for a while. This time he was with some other people, including Bob Armstrong, a member of a string band Crumb had formed, and and a fine cartoonist himself. We had a good time listening to records and talking. For a couple of years, I've been thinking I could write comic book stories that were different from anything being done by both straight cartoonists and underground cartoonists like Crumb. Now with Crumb and Armstrong there, I started thinking about it again in more detail than ever. The guys who do that animal comic and superhero stuff for straight comics are really limited because they got to try to appeal to kids. The guys who do underground comics have really opened things up, but there's still plenty more things that can be done with them. They got great potential. You can do as much with comics as the novel, or movies, or plays, or anything. Comics are words and pictures. You can do anything with words and pictures. Actually, there were some stories I wanted to write that I had just thought about so much that I had just about completed them in my mind. All I had to do was write them down on paper. So that day, when I got back from work, I sat down and wrote one of the stories, using panels, stick figures, and word and thought balloons. I showed the story to Crumb and Armstrong, and they liked it a lot.
Great stuff, Harvey.
That really encouraged me. I sat and wrote some more stories in the next couple of days. Crumb and Armstrong took a few with them when they left and illustrated them. The stories got printed. That got me started. Since then, I've been getting...
Uh-oh, that's this page I didn't do.
Oh my goodness.
That's okay. It's mostly Harvey just standing there.
Okay.
Like that last panel.
like-
Yeah, it looks like this one.
Since then, I've been getting more and more stories published, and I really feel good about that. Comics are such a great art form. Thinking. Man, just imagine, if I'd never met Crumb, I'd have never gotten into writing comics. That just goes to show you. On the other hand, think of all the people I didn't meet who could have got me into stuff I'm not even thinking about now. Man, this is weird. I started to tell you about what Crumb was like before he got famous. Then I started telling you about me. Then I started talking about fate. Well, you know how it is. I mean, you know, take it easy. Phew.
And this is one called Alice Quinn.
Yeah, I'd like to read this one. Where is Alice Quinn in here?
Uh-huh, should be.
Sure.
Is that
Well,
gonna
if it's
be
not,
the
it's in here, let
horses?
me see.
Sorry,
Oh,
guys.
I'm really pretty sure it's in there, though. Let's see. Time flies. Adam pukes.
Oh,
President's Day, no, I think it's in there.
really?
Yep.
Sorry, guys. Come on, Alice Quinn.
Do you want me to find it for you?
Please.
Okay, you talk or something.
It's in a copy over here in the collection. Let's see if I can find it from that.
So over on the table is a collection of what the actual comics look like.